So I got a question here, and it says, how do we live for God in a non-religious career or environment? For example, a scientist or an architect or at school, whatever. How do we live for God in a non-religious environment? And that is a great question. The first thing you're going to want to do is pray. And not just pray for a couple of minutes before bed, but pray a lot. Because if we're going to be holy in an unholy world, if we're going to be religious in a non-religious setting, then we got to have God with us. If we want to keep our faith, we got to keep God close. And that means having a prayer time, not just a couple minutes before bed, but an actual prayer time where we carve out a good part of our day or a good part of our night before we go to bed to pray to God and to stay close to Him, to read the Bible, and to really have a good prayer life. That is key to keeping your faith when you're often in non-faith environments. Second, you want to be a good example. You want to be a good example of Jesus. You want to be a great example of love, of kindness, of peace, of patience, of understanding, of obedience, of being a good worker, working as hard as you can. You don't want to be lazy. You don't want to be doing things that you shouldn't be doing. You want to be a great example so that when people see you, they say, hey, what's different about you? Why do you act like this? I've never seen you swear. I've never seen you do this or that. And I've had people come up to me at my jobs and ask me, hey, are you a Christian? Because you do X, Y, and Z. And it's because I live my faith with my example. And then sometimes after that, people will ask me about it and I'll be happy to share about it with my words. But you got to live your faith first. Which brings me to the third point that's really related to it, is don't act like everybody else. Don't be like everyone else. If everyone else at your job swears and says the F word or tells dirty jokes or looks at, dirty magazines or something, you don't do it. Don't swear. Don't tell dirty jokes. Don't be like everyone else. I mean, what merit is there in that? It's kind of like Jesus in, Matthew, the book of Matthew, when he says, hey, if you greet those who greet you, if you're nice to those who are nice to you, what profit is that? Even pagans and tax collectors do the same. And if you swear like everybody else, what makes you Christian? If you tell dirty jokes like everyone else and look at this or that like everyone else, watch movies like everyone else, what makes you different? What makes you a follower of Jesus? What sets you apart as a model for them to look up to? The fact is, we not only got to walk the walk, we got to talk the talk. And not only do we have to talk the talk, we have to walk the walk. They go hand in hand. This corresponds to our fourth point, which is to be strong. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to live your faith. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be even afraid to be labeled as a Jesus freak, because it means you're right. You're on the right track. If everyone's driving around with flat tires in town and you're the only one with inflated tires, you're right. Don't be embarrassed about it. And so it's the same thing. If we are living our faith, don't let people make fun of you. Don't back down. Don't let people tell you that you're wrong. Don't let people laugh at you. Own it. Act like, hey, I love my faith. I'll live it any day of the week. You can make fun of it, but I love my faith. That's when they'll be like, wait, what? You actually like being Catholic? Well, yeah, I love being Catholic, but there's so many rules. Yeah, I know, but we have rules everywhere. We have rules in society. We have rules in marriages. I can't just go cheat on my wife. I just can't go spit in my girlfriend's face. I can't drink and beat her, like all these other things. I mean, we have rules. We have things that are right and things that are wrong, but they actually help us to be fulfilled humans. And these people will be like, wow, that's interesting. When you live your faith and you don't back down, that's the key. Don't be afraid. And don't compromise your morals and your values. That's key. Don't compromise your morals or your values. Follow Jesus. Let Him be the key. Let Him be your guide. And let Him tell you what you need to do. That's why we start every day with prayer. That's why we end every day with prayer. That's why Jesus is the first person in our life, not everyone else. If you're living for the world, you can't live for Jesus. If you live for Jesus, you're going to eventually come into conflict with the world. Live for Jesus. Now, I've worked in many of these environments, and I've worked in some really bad environments where some people swear the F word like 6 times in one sentence. And it's like for the whole half an hour of our lunch break. I remember I worked at a woodworking place once in my town, and that's exactly how it was. They all swore so much. They took God's name in vain and that sort of thing. I mean, it was really bad to an extreme that I couldn't really be around it. In fact, I didn't really want to be around it. So oftentimes, I'd eat lunch there, and then oftentimes I'd bring my Bible and I'd go eat lunch on my own and just read the Bible, read the Psalms during lunch. You know what? That was so much more inspiring. That was so much more freeing. And it gave me the courage, and it gave me the grace, and it gave me the strength to keep going back to work and to being a good example. Because they'd make fun of me in there sometimes for my faith. And you know what? I would challenge them in their disbelief, and I would challenge them to live and be better examples. I remember at a restaurant once, this guy came up to me, and I almost slipped on a piece of ice and killed myself. And instead of saying holy like I would have in my old days, I said holy Moses. And this guy's like, dude, did you just say Moses? And I was like, yeah. He's like, what are you, some sort of religious freak or something? And I was like, yeah, kinda. And he's like, Moses. So he actually nicknamed me Moses, and he started calling me Moses after that. Now, I didn't back down. I didn't act like, oh my gosh, he's making fun of me. Oh, I'm being persecuted. No, that's for babies. And if you're going to live for Jesus, you have to stand up and you have to be strong. Now, every once in a while, I'd hear this guy take God's name in vain. And I'd walk up to him and I'd say, hey. And this guy was huge. He was a really big guy, and he was bald and scarred, psycho looking. And he's like, what do you want? And I was like, I love God. And he's like, what did you say to me? I said, I love God. He's like, get the F out of my face before I kill you. Okay, that's fine. Don't kill me. You know, and 2 days later, I'd hear him take God's name and I'm like, hey, I love God. He's like, get out of my face. I don't care, church boy. You know, and eventually a few weeks later, I remember I heard him say as I was walking away, he's like, hey, I must have offended Brian, because every time I mention God somehow, he always, mentions it. And so I didn't even realize, I was saying it, he said. And then about 6 months later, me and this guy were in the back of the restaurant, and this guy almost breaks down and cries right in front of me. And he opens up his whole life story and tells me he never knew his father. And his father got rid of him at 2 years old because he didn't want him. And he's really felt like this hole in his heart ever since. I mean, this was like really deep stuff that this guy was opening up right in front of me, and for no reason at all except that he trusted me. I earned his trust. I didn't back down. He saw something in me that was real. He saw something in me that was true. He saw something in me that not everyone else has. And when he left that restaurant, he said I was only 2 people in the whole world that he respected. I was one of 2 people he respected in the whole world because I didn't back down in my faith. I was never a jerk. I never shoved it down anyone's throat. I wasn't preachy, but I was real, and I lived my faith. It all starts with prayer. And it all starts with having that relationship with Jesus and having him first in your life. It starts with being a good example, joy-filled witness, loving, kind, respectful to everybody. And it starts with not being like everyone else, not sinning, not swearing, not cursing, not telling dirty jokes, not looking at pornography or bad information or anything like that with other coworkers, not being like them. Really, we're called to be the light to the world. We're different. And even if that means we're ostracized a little bit, it's important that we live our faith. And it's important that you keep friends near you who are faith-filled so that you're not surrounded by everyone who's not all the time. So if you have friends at home who are faith-filled, stay near them. And if you don't, stay following my YouTube, stay on social media, like follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, stay connected to these faith-filled posts because these will inspire you in your faith. These are what will help you to live it. And that's important when we live in an unholy, unrighteous, unreligious society. We need to keep our faith solid.